are listening to the Chompcast, the official podcast of Sword Chomp. And remember, you can always go to swordchomp.com, where you can access the many places our podcast is available for download. But if you're listening to the show right now, that means you found us. So welcome to the madness that is the Chompcast. We have a podcast of mythical proportions today. The topic of the show is basically how mythologies have influenced or affected video games, how they have shaped our medium, mostly Greek and Norse mythologies. And we have help from the Instagram community there as well, at SwordChomp on Instagram. So it should be a lot of fun to get the listeners involved. I have a little teaser for God of War. Not too much, just the tip or the pale white head of Kratos to keep you wanting more for next week, where we have a God of War spectacular. Me and Fish have some fun anecdotal Far Cry stories to tell. And the polls this week were incredible. We discussed results from the all-decade podcast idea, beards, the best God of War game, and the Sword Chomp Twitter that we are working hard to grow. And we actually hosted a fight there today, so we'll have the results of Senua versus Kratos later on in the show. We have a really heartfelt Far Cry email from a listener that's pretty badass. I'm excited to read that and talk about it with you guys. And it's gonna be a fantastic time. So BioBreak this week also has sort of a correlation with Sea of Thieves, which is sort of like our ongoing, continuing sort of like game of the show, as me and Josh and some friends and probably Fish soon have been playing little Sea of Thieves every week, been posting it on the Instagram. So much to the surprise of people who are like, you guys are still playing this game? Yeah, we're still playing Sea of Thieves. So it's going to be a jam-packed, badass show. So let's get to some mythological themed intros today. I see Fish is bouncing up and down. He's ready to go. From Texas, the one and only. And so these intros are inspired by, like, if you guys were like heroes or gods or whatever in like mythology, like different kinds of mythology, okay? But I thought of it in the terms of you guys knowing you guys my whole life and my best friend. So Fish, I think you are Priapus, okay? That is the god of fertility, all right? Now, his statue, holding a wooden sickle in his hand, was used in the Roman gardens as a scarecrow, and his enormous penis as a threat against thieves. His enormous penis. Oh, I'm sorry. That's Josh's intro. How you doing this week, Josh?
Doing all right. I managed to make it up the stairs. I was not sure if I'd be able to make it up the stairs, with that enormous penis in my own way. But I got up here ready to podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, the people think it's all, fun and games with a huge dick, and they don't really think about the negative consequences of going through everyday life with a member like that.
Yeah, so. If the show goes too long, it can be a real medical issue.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Mm-hmm. Poor Fish.
No. Oh God.
Thank you, Brad.
That's my life.
Shay had to sneak that somewhere in there. Josh, I noticed you're wearing a Celeste shirt. I just noticed that as I was doing these intros. Wow, you are the Celeste enthusiast on the podcast, I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I managed to sneak it by you last week, but I was actually wearing a Sharks shirt when you were talking about how Sharks were the coolest.
Oh, and you didn't. You should have said something.
Yeah. Well, I was intentionally trying to sneak it by you since I was wearing my Earthbound shirt.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, glad to have you here, Josh. I was just thinking about that in the context of, how great this year's been, from Sea of Thieves to God of War to, in your case, Celeste. For me, Moss. Like, I didn't even think about Celeste last time we were talking about all the great games of the year, but for a lot of people, it is one of the best games of the year. So. This year has been incredible. Up next, of course, the one and only, the professor, Shay Layton, is here from Japan. And I was thinking about this, Shay. If you were in Greek mythology, I think you'd be a philosopher, okay? I have you, and this is based off of a real philosopher. Apparently his name was Tyndarus Maximus, all right? And this philosopher, he coined the phrase, this is real, because like some of these philosophers are really well known for their phrases and their theories and whatnot. He coined the phrase, "Why are you still here? Do you need me to call you an Uber?" So, and that's been passed down from generations to generations, so. Oh God, he's just gonna talk with his soundboard today.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see your voice,
bro?
Shay. He really wants to try. We've been trying these joke characters, Brad and Chad, before the show, and apparently he really wants to be Brad today. How you doing, Brad?
Yo, I'm good, bro. Just watching the fucking Cavs and Pacers game right before the show. Braun got his ass whooped. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, that seems like a Brad opinion. Swiping the Tinder while you're watching that b-ball. All right, Brad.
Dude, there's some nasty trim on the Tinderscapes, I tell you.
Oh God, trim. That's we have a trim drop here on the first ever drop of the use of the word trim on the podcast. All right, Brad. I don't know if we can have you around here, Brad. Where's Shay? Where's the professor? Bring him back.
You do realize sentient life has never actually used the word trim in that way.
You know, I'll go get Shay's buried under all my empty axe cans. I'll go grab him real quick.
It's like a pile of axe. His hand just breaks out of a whole pile of, like a zombie coming out of the ground.
Just breaks out like, I can't breathe. What's up, guys? How's it going?
It's going to,
right.
well.
Serious time.
Okay, serious. Glad you're here today, Shay. And of course, I need to go back to Fish, the one and only. I kind of diverted on him today. Fish is indeed here. Now, Fish, don't be offended. I actually was looking this up, doing the research for the show, and this is real. In the Roman culture, it was actually a high honor to have a small penis, okay? So that's why all the statues had tiny penises. This is true. This is not like me fucking with you at all. In fact, I was reading this article that said this specifically. They have suggested small penises are more culturally valued than large penises because large penises were associated with foolishness, lust, and ugliness. And a lot of the statues of like bad people had huge erect penises. It's fascinating.
Wow. Cool. I guess I'd be somewhere in between those two.
Oh, God. He never fully commit to the joke. He's like, I don't want to go. Come on, Fish. You gotta sink with the ship. That's how it goes.
Well, I'm pretty sure you were trying to steer me into being proud of a small dick, which I don't have.
Yeah.
It sounds
Fish
so
is
much.
really working on his search engine optimization right now. He doesn't want the first 5 pages to just be Fish's small dick.
No.
Well, his small dick isn't even going to take one line of one page, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't worry. It's like half an entry.
Half an entry. Well,
Dear
yeah. Fish, I'm telling you, if you try and like defend yourself against it, it just makes it look more guilty. You just embrace it, You sound defensive, and you know what? People get defensive, and there's
embrace it with your two fingers, your two most important fingers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, pinky and ringy.
Oh. There's no shame in having a small penis.
Pinky
Fish.
and ringy?
Come on.
Who the fuck has ever called it ringy?
They have to have cute names. They have to be just fucking adorable little fingers to make that dick look as manly as possible.
This just reminds me of like Scary Movie, Chris Elliott, my germs, when he's digging his little hand in the turkey. I don't know why, but that's what it reminds me of.
Okay.
I'm just like, okay. That's a great response. Okay. I was actually talking with one of our friends and fans, Sector 7 Item Shop. She made our that big fancy Sword Chomp logo, and she does a bunch of cool stuff for us. She was joking around that we need merchandise. We need Sword Chomp condoms, and when you open them up, they're Fish brand, and they have tiny little condoms on the inside. Just teeny little.
You don't actually unroll them. It's just the one sheet as is.
Yes.
Yeah. They don't unroll. They're just...
No, but that's still giving them a lot of credit for the girth. That'd be kind of weird. So, I'm right there, Fish, with you. Come on, Nano brothers for life. We're on this ship. We're sinking together. Okay.
I think we need to get into Sword Chomp dental dams at this point because you're chomping through the trim at that point.
Oh no! There we go. That's definitely a product that Shay can endorse. I love
even
the
Fish is grimacing. Oh man, I did take it too far. Sorry, guys.
Anyways, my name is Morgan Barnes. Of course, I'm here from Montana. And yeah, we just like to have a lot of fun around here. And we have a pretty badass topic of the show today, as we were talking about mythology and how it's affected gaming, which is appropriate because we are about to set into God of War, which is easily the best rated game of the year, but it's also one of the most anticipated games in a long time. Sort of the reimagining of a very popular but sort of polarizing franchise that sold millions and millions of copies over the past couple decades. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Talk mythology, get down to some interesting conversations, see where this takes us. I will say this as my starting point here. The first time I can ever really think about mythology really affecting me as a kid, as a younger gamer, would have probably been something like Final Fantasy, which I was obsessed with as a kid. And, Final Fantasy VIII was my gateway drug, and then from there I played 7 and 9 and all that stuff. And the summons in Final Fantasy were always based off of, like, mythological figures, like Odin. Mm-hmm. Quetzalcoatl was one I really loved as a kid. It was like this giant electric bird. I actually remember I was younger, and I was like, what is Quetzalcoatl? What the hell is this, right? And I remember, like, just seeing this badass lightning bird fly up and shoot this huge electricity bomb, and I went and looked it up, and I found out that Quetzalcoatl was basically like this thing from the Aztecs, and it was basically like a deity, and I was learning all about it, sort of like a serpent dragon thing. Now, Final Fantasy will have its own interpretations of that, and that's really cool. But, of course, you have Odin and the Shiva. There's just tons of Final Fantasy characters that really influenced me like that. Sorry, Shay, I see you leaning up. You got something to add to
Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, the most mythological summon from Final Fantasy VIII, which was a fat chocobo. I remember that one being in many different mythological stories.
It's true. Fat chocobo has been heralded through the ages. But that honestly was where I started. Even as a kid, I was never really that much into mythology, but that's where I started really seeing how it was affecting video games in an interesting way, because Final Fantasy was my entire, like, young adult years. That was my love. And I think that's actually a good segue as I pass this to you guys too, because one of the comments from one of our listeners, Sector 7 Item Shop, says, it's not really an influence per se, but many Final Fantasy summons had ties to mythology. Odin, for example, is the representation of the Nordic god, and there are several other mythical representations that I mentioned. There's no grand scheme behind the summons in the series other than the divine assistance, so there's never really a backstory. 6 had a brief blurb about every Esper obtained, but it was more of a story than a mythology. There's also weaponry throughout the series that has some Roman and Greek namesake, but it doesn't go much beyond that. And that's true. That's my first exposure to it, but most of it's sort of surface level stuff, because Final Fantasy is sort of a weird melting pot of all sorts of crazy ideas, and that's what makes it cool. But Shay, I know this was a topic that you had thought of, and so what inspired it for you, or what really, what direction were you going with it?
I've just really been thinking about this, like, the past 6 months, about how mythology really affects and influences our games, because I took some mythology classes back in college, and I read a lot of Ovid, and I read I read Ulysses, and I read some of the other stories as well, and just, it's not something like I just ever, put my mind to it and just thought about how it directly or indirectly correlates with mythology, but it really, really does, because, for example,
Josh distracting Shay on the private chat. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, it's my lot in life.
It's your one redeeming factor. No, but for example, like, a lot of tragedy happens in a lot of the more serious video games we play. Obviously, the first one for me that comes to mind is Senua, the character Senua in Hellblade, and a lot of that